Over the next 2 days in a row, I'm going to be working on one tattoo for my client that has flown in from Ireland. The project is of a fantasy dragon goddess queen. That's the inspiration for this piece. And also the woman has to somewhat resemble my client's wife. Now there's one issue, one slight hurdle that we have to cross. This is a cover-up. And this one will not be easy. It takes up almost half of his lower leg. The real challenge with cover-ups isn't just a matter of putting something on top and hoping for the best. You have to be really strategic with the colors that you choose and also the level of detail. So something like a portrait where you're using lots of skin tones like peaches and oranges, soft colors, things like that, it just doesn't work as a cover-up. It's made it tricky for me, but I think I found a solution and I am really happy with this design. That all being said, let's get set up and wait for my client to arrive. Nothing out of the ordinary getting set up today. I always start the day with all the same equipment, every single tattoo, no matter what. It's no different, even though this piece is a cover-up. What I tend to do is I just get my essentials laid out in the same order. That way it's easy for me to navigate as I'm working. It's like second nature for me now. And then if I'm having any trouble with the skin, I'll make some adjustments to my needles or my machine as the day goes. I just play by ear. So let me just quickly explain when it comes to cover-up tattoos. It's not as simple as just putting a new tattoo directly on top of your old tattoo. We need to think about it a little bit more carefully than that. See, the ink doesn't directly go on top. Inside the skin, it all mixes together and it's on the same layer. What this means is when we're selecting our colors for the tattoo design, we need to make sure that we're choosing colors which are going to be strong enough to overpower the ink that's already there. It needs to be stronger than our foundation. Otherwise, once the tattoo is healed, you're going to see the old one right through. So normally what I would choose to do, if someone had a small tattoo that they wanted covering up, I would get the new design and I would place it next to or above as close as possible to the old tattoo. That way we can use the bright colors in the new piece on fresh skin, and then we'd use the background with dark colors to do the cover up. So technically what we're doing is distracting you from the old tattoo, but that's the trick. So what does that mean for this tattoo in particular? Well, we can't rely on a background to do the cover up for us. Because the tattoo is so big, we're going to need to make it part of the overall design. In my experience, I think skulls are one of the best choices to use for a cover up. You can add lots of texture, really push the contrast, and it's going to help hide what's underneath without taking away from the overall piece. And the practicality aside, I think it actually adds to this piece as well. It makes the woman look that much more powerful and significant. Kind of like she's been slaying dragons. And I think my client would agree that his wife is most definitely a terrifying dragon slayer. Oh mate, I've been every fucking tattoo I practice. So even looking at his old tattoo as close as I am now and shaving it for the first time, this is the clearest that I've seen it. Bear in mind I'd only seen it in photographs up until this point when I was having the consultations with my client, and I still couldn't even tell exactly what it was supposed to be. I could obviously tell it was some type of female character from something, but I actually thought she was on her knees and her legs were crossed behind her back. and that I just thought she had really tiny legs, but it's not. That's actually a sword. Her waist is chopped off, so her legs would have carried on further down if we were to draw on the rest of her legs, so it kind of makes sense now. That being said, it's not the worst tattoo that I've ever seen, to be honest, and he's here now, so we're going to do a cover up and we're going to get it right for the last time. Maybe we could try shifting it that way.
I mean, it is sort of slightly more this way than...
Yeah, for sure, yeah, I agree.
Well,
it's obviously that cover up being there. Like, what I would have actually done is made her face bigger and then shift it down, but we can't.
Oh.
Let's try shifting it, because then I think we'll both cross that off our minds.
I think the skull's good. It's just sort of shifting this around slightly.
Yeah.
Sort of more there. And then that'll bring the hair, sort of round a bit as well.
Yeah. Now, unfortunately, we didn't get her stuck on first try. Even though the face was in a great spot, the crown was slightly too close to the knee for both of our liking. It would have meant we would have had to lose a lot of the detail. So 90 pence later, getting her printed off one more time. Scratch that, £1.80 later, we're getting her printed off for the third time. And this time, we're going to smash it. I already have my pen markings from the first time of sticking this on, so I know all I have to do when I line it back up is just go about an inch, maybe slightly less, to the left, and then it's going to be perfect. But I also really want to make sure that I keep the skull in the same position, because we were both really happy. So we're going to do more of a slight tilt from the top whilst pivoting from the bottom to keep that in more or less the same location. Yeah, that's way better.
Yeah.
100%. Go check that out. She's more central there. Spin around. I'm so glad that we decided to move this one. This position looks way better. We can get all of the crown in there, avoiding the knee, and everything is front and center. Whilst that's drying, I'm just going to pour out my colors. A simple color palette that we're using today. A lot of browns to go with the reds and oranges for that fiery hell landscape we've got. And then this turquoisey blue, one of my favorites. I love it right now. And that is going to do a lot of the heavy lifting when it comes to the cover up, that blue and gray. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. The first few hours of today was just spent getting a lot of the foundational work in, a lot of outlines with black and small little details, nothing crazy. And as I'm working up towards the teeth, it's really starting to show just how faded the old tattoo was. See, when you've got nothing to compare it to, and I'm just looking at this dark tattoo on pale skin, it looks a lot darker than it actually is. But as soon as I'm putting my fresh black down, you can just see how much darker the new ink is compared to the old. And that really gives me a lot of confidence. Although I knew I was going to be able to successfully do this cover up. Like I said before, I've done cover ups a lot bigger than this and a lot scarier. But even still, I'm still human. There is always a little bit of anxiety going into such a challenging project. So when I hit that part of the day where I'm just like, I know we're going to get through this smoothly. It's not going to be a struggle. and I can see that the cover up is covering up as planned. It just takes the edge off and I get myself in the zone and I'm just locked in to enjoy the rest of this day session. There's not many tasks in life that actually require a fingernail, but when you don't have any. All right. Doesn't feel too tight, does it? Or is it all right? Leave it on until we get here. Back in the game on day 2 with what I thought was the hard part already done. The cover up is out the way and I'm thinking smooth sailing. Little did I know before we started that this was about to be one of the longest day sessions I think I have done in years. Well, definitely one of the longest I've done in at least 4 years and possibly one of the longest ever. I was absolutely shattered. It took me ages, but more on that later. I'm just gonna rub off the stencil from yesterday. It was intact, but we made a few changes, my client and I, to the design on day 1, and rather than letting it eat up too much tattoo time, we decided to just stick on the original design that I made. It was like my first draft with the stencil because I had that prepared. Get the cover up done, the skull because we wasn't making any changes there, and then on day 2 gonna apply the new stencil, which is what I'm doing here. A lot of the time, if the stencil on day 2 is perfectly intact, just like it was today, I'd just carry on straight away and save all of this time, especially because we've had it wrapped up overnight with one of the pads on. It hasn't got dirty, so we are good to just go. But making some changes, and I have to make sure we can realign the stencil perfectly, which is always a little bit of a challenge, but I must say, I do think I am pretty good at it. First try Friday. I can feel it. Bosh. Seamless.
Yep.
Sweet. So getting started on day 2, the pressure was on. So as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, my client had flown in from Ireland for this tattoo, and he had his return flight going home booked for this evening at like 8 o'clock, which when he told me, I thought, oh my goodness, why have you done that? Why didn't you book it for tomorrow? Because I can never guarantee what time we're going to finish. You know, 90% of the time I like to be done before 6 o'clock, around 5, you know, just like an average working person. I realize as a self-employed artist, it is not that straightforward. I can't just clock out at 5 o'clock, but I like to be done around that time. You know, get home for dinner, see the baby, things like that. But we still had a lot to do. Comparing it to day 1, we only really had 2 things to think about. We had the skull, and then we had the little dragon, which was above the skull, which didn't really take too long anyway. But today we've got the portrait, the hair, the crown, and the other dragon, which is around the back. That's the way I'm breaking it down in my mind. I know it's all one image, but in order for me to work and take this in bite-sized chunks, I break it up into those main sections. So with that 8 p.m. flight looming in the back of both of our minds, we knew that it would take, say, an hour drive from the studio for him to get to the airport. You need an hour buffer period before the flight. So he'd be out the door by 6 o'clock, meaning I'd have to finish tattooing around 5:30 in order to have 30 minutes or so to take pictures and wrap him up and send him on his way, which at first seemed like it could be manageable. But as the day was going on and we passed lunchtime, I just knew there was no way I was going to be able to keep the same high standard and have the tattoo finished by 5:30. There was just no way. And I absolutely refuse to rush my work and spoil what is a great piece of art, a permanent piece of art, might I add. It is just not worth it. It's not worth it for me. It's not worth it for the client. No one would be happy with a rush tattoo. So what would normally happen is, if a client is local or in the country, pretty straightforward, you would just book another appointment to finish it off, either at a later date, or if I have the day off the following day, you can just come back the next day. If you're staying in a hotel nearby, you're already around the corner. That is best case scenario. And this tattoo is pretty big, and it was already extremely ambitious to say we were going to get this done in 2 days. I felt confident, but I can never make promises. And in reality, we should have had a third day scheduled just to break it up that little bit more and not have to work so late. However, we made it through. There was no way my client was going to leave the studio with an unfinished tattoo. He didn't want to fly all the way home with a bit of it missing. That would annoy me as well, I must admit. I'm not the type of person who wants an unfinished tattoo. I want it done. I'm just going to sit there like a big brave boy and deal with all the pain. So fortunately, my client was able to extend his stay at the hotel and push his flight back until tomorrow, which meant we had no time limit, but we still had to get the piece done today. But I must admit, it felt so much more relaxing going through the rest of the tattoo, knowing I could just take my time, take as many breaks as I need to keep my concentration high and the energy high, and get the piece finished to a standard that I am proud of. And then obviously that he would be happy with, because that is what he's here for. That's what he's paying me for. He's paying me for a good tattoo, the best that I can do. And that is what I'm always trying to offer to my clients, of course. Looking back on this tattoo, I'm thinking to myself, what is it that made this piece take particularly long compared to other tattoos that I've done of a similar size? Well, I think it comes down to the color palette here. The face in particular. As the setting of this piece is all in a fiery underworld, we have this very strong, fiery light source coming from the right side, which is illuminating her cheeks. Lots of yellows and bright colors there, and I really love that intense light source because it creates a lot of good contrast, and that is what I always like to do in my work. Now, because we've got that fiery setting, all of the left side of the cheek in the portrait is in the shadows. So I've got a lot of muted colors, but I'm not contrasting them with cold colors. They're still very warm to give the impression that she is in this fiery atmosphere. Like, that's the vibe I want to go for. So I'm having to mute down a lot of these warm colors, and I'm mixing them as I go in the needle. I don't have these colors on my shelf. I'm literally making them up so I can get the right tone. And I think that, looking back, is what ate into a lot of the time. The face took me a good amount of time to get the colors right. It is what it is. As long as I focus on making each section of the tattoo the best that I can, standing back and looking at the whole piece at the end when we're finished, it will make being patient so worth it. What the fuck? If anyone would be interested in booking a tattoo for themselves with me, you can get in touch either by scanning the QR code on the screen, or there is a link to my website in the description. I look forward to hearing from you, booking some cool tattoos for yourself. If you've got a terrible tattoo that needs covering up, well, here's your proof. I can do it, most likely, hopefully. I need to see it first. But other than that, if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Take it easy.